Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We're just here to read Srimad Bhagavatam again because that's what we do with our lives. We make time to read the Bhagavatam.
Hello. That's all we got to say, but anyway.
Hello. Okay.
Canto 4, Chapter 9, Text 29.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Maitreya answered, Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of his stepmother, was greatly aggrieved, and thus, when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget her misbehaviour. He did not demand actual liberation from this material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. Purport. This important verse has been discussed by many stalwart commentators. Why was Dhruva Maharaj not very pleased, even after achieving the goal of life he desired? A pure devotee is always free from any kind of material desires. In the material world, one's material desires are almost demoniac. One thinks of others as one's enemies. One thinks of revenge against one's enemies. One aspires to become the topmost leader or topmost person in this material world, and thus one competes with all others. This has been described in the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, as asuric. A pure devotee has no demand from the Lord. His only concern is to serve the Lord sincerely and seriously, and he is not at all concerned about what will happen in the future. In the Mukunda Mala Stotra, King Kulashekar, author of the book, states in his prayer, My dear Lord, I don't want any position of sense gratification within this material world. I simply want to engage in your service perpetually. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya in his Shikshastakam also prayed, My Lord, I do not want any amount of material wealth. I do not want any number of materialistic followers, nor do I want any attractive wife to enjoy. The only thing I want is that I may engage life after life in your service. Lord Chaitanya did not pray even for mukti or liberation. I suppose, because this is a long pop-up, I think it'd be interesting to read on, because this point that Prabhupada points out straight away in the pop-up right at the beginning, it comes up in the verse and straight away he addresses it, but it obviously, I assume he's going to unpack it more, which is that after all this, Dhruva Maharaj still is aggrieved, is affected by what his stepmother said and did, which is what made him leave in the first place. But as we saw, he goes, Narada Muni becomes his spiritual master. He sees Lord Vishnu face to face, and not only that, but Lord Vishnu's extremely pleased with him, not just a little bit. I mean, it's one thing to see Lord Vishnu, but it's another thing to be blessed to the level that Dhruva Maharaj has been. You're going to get your own planet. It's going to be pretty amazing. I'm going to reside in that planet. It's not going to be annihilated at the end when everyone... It's even better than Lord Brahma's. You're going to go back to God. I mean, it's a win-win all round. So it is interesting that it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how this is unpacked in the pop-up, that he's still affected. And that kind of like, I don't know, it's interesting from the point of view, like, it keeps it real almost, he hasn't just become, oh, I'm such a pure devotee and God bless my stepmother and whatever. It's like, actually, what you did wasn't cool, and I still remembered it, by the way. It's like, which, we may put ourselves or pretend or if, act like we're on a certain level, but if we're honest, we're not. Sometimes you have to be honest and say, yeah, no, that really affected me. I don't like that. Even though I may be doing this, practicing this, doing this, meditating, doing this, I've got to be straight. I'm still affected by what that person did,
Yeah, and that's there, and I agree. I think it's an interesting dynamic to explore. One thing that comes up, though, is that if you read the rest of the verse, he says that he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. So, it's not that he was holding something against her, but he remembered, he did not forget her misbehavior, but what he's ashamed of is the way he responded to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not just the way she acted. Okay, she misbehaved, but what he's upset about now, because let's not forget, he also became very purified by the presence of the Lord. So what it's saying there is what he's ashamed of is his misbehavior. He's simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. Because after all of that, he went to see the Lord and asked him for some material benedictions,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's a good point. I also thought in this verse that what Prabhupada said here, pure devotee has no demand from the Lord. His only concern is to serve the Lord sincerely and seriously, and he is not at all concerned about what will happen in the future. And for me that was like, well, okay, Hare Krishna. I get it, but at the same time, it really made me think because, of course, in the beginning of joining ISKCON, it was like, yeah, whatever, no need to worry about the future. But then I started to see, at least this, my personal experience, maybe we've had that experience, I started to see people who lived a lot of their life like that, and they were in their future. Their present was now what used to be the projection of their future. And they were suffering and, blaming ISKCON, blaming Krishna, upset, somewhat blissful, but at the same time kind of like in a situation where they think, why am I in this situation? Or this is the famous quote, I gave the best years of my life, or I gave so many years. And my feeling is like, well, yeah, you should be still giving years, and you should be happy doing it. That should be it. And to that extent, I'm afraid that I would like to pose the argument, and I'm sure Prabhupada will defeat it, or at least put it in a different perspective, that it's not that our whole life is based on, I want a better future, or this saying that when I get this, then I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not saying that. But what I'm saying is that I think it would be mode of ignorance to live a life thinking that I don't have to use my intelligence to consider that the decisions that I make now will determine the future that I have. And if I want to be, let's say, hypothetically, poverty-stricken in the future, then, like that. Or if I want to have bad health in the future, then I don't do this. Or if, in the future I want to have kids, or I want to be married, or I don't want to be married, or, whatever it is. That because we are we want to be a pure devotee, but here we have a 5-year-old boy, and similar with Prahlad Maharaj, similar with other personalities in the Bhagavatam, that, they went on to be like exaltedly great personalities in so many different ways, of course. But, they made decisions along the way about what they would do for them to have their future. I mean, anyway, there's a lot of discussion, but I just thought it was an interesting point, just that one statement that, a devotee is not at all concerned about what will happen in the future. from one perspective, I get it. And a sannyasi, or the last stages of life, you just travel, and you don't worry about your pension. You don't worry about this. You don't, Now, I mean, that's a hypothetical, because, I mean, I think probably a lot of traveling sannyasis, they may not be worried about the future, but somehow they're also looked after and taken care of. So there are different things to consider.
Now, one thing, okay, quick. Like, a child is not worried about its future. Most. Maybe some unfortunate ones, and I mean that just sincerely, they're not in nice situations, but for the most part, children are not worried. And I was thinking, why? Like, thinking about myself, I wasn't worried about my future. Why? Because I felt, I mean, I was fed, I was watered, I had a bed to sleep on, I had a roof over my head, and I felt secure. There was no insecurity financially or with love or support like that. It was very strong family nucleus. So I was just thinking, in terms of a devotee who might have this mentality, but sannyasi or otherwise, householder, brahmachari, whatever, is if you're so Krishna conscious or so attached or so, certain level of taste or realization, that you just don't have an anxiety or fear about the future or my comfort or what could be or not be. If that makes, like if you're in a relationship, married or whatever, and then you just don't, you're secure, you're so, you feel so supported and sheltered that you just don't worry about the little things that maybe others maybe, what's gonna happen, or he's gonna leave me or whatever, some insecurity. But you generally, if someone's in such a tight relationship, it's just, you just glide through life, as it were, until something challenges you. I know somehow that came to my mind, that a certain level of realizations. I don't mean like on someone on something. Yeah, faith. That's it. Yeah, faith, and it doesn't have to be a specific ashram. It doesn't have to be. It's not just the sannyasis that have that level. Yeah. Your simple householder or brahmachari, whatever, can have that level of, I'm happy, I'm dhira, I'm sober, I'm
not bothered, not concerned.
And that faith can, if you want to relate it to everyday life, it can be in your spouse, it can be in your job, for example. You may just feel so secure, it could be in any friendship, relationship, as it were. I know, that's what I'm...
No, that's a good point. And I guess something that came up for me also thinking is that one cannot be concerned about what will happen in the future, but it doesn't mean that they still don't act and do things.
Yeah, be practical.
I mean, Prabhupada said, I've hatched this transcendental plot of how to get money, by selling my books. And he called it the family business. Mm. But if you don't really care about the future, then you don't give two figs. If you don't care about the future, you don't create a society, You don't institute a society to run things if you don't care about the future. I mean, in one sense, our whole movement is based on an instruction in the past that predicted the future, which we quote all the time, which is that, my name will be, heard and chanted in every town and village in the, across the globe. With the order of that, Prabhupada was instructed to go and preach in the West. All of that is projecting into the future. So it's like a lot of things that are said, it can be interpreted one way, but you have to really discuss it and understand it threadbare to see that it's, maybe the key thing here is that you're not concerned in the sense that you're not disturbed, you're not fearful. So even because no matter, you can buy the best health insurance, you can have the best doctors, you can have the best medicine, the organic food, you can do all this stuff. You can be super healthy because you're so worried about living a long life, and then, you step off the curb and get hit by a blinking bus. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We still should, act intelligently to project the most positive path and progressive path into the future. At the same time, we're not so concerned about it because we know ultimately it's in Krishna's hands. So there's a certain level of detachment, but still we would act. You know, I mean, we don't know if we're going to die tomorrow. Still, we start making plans of how to spread the mission, you know. The book marathon is coming up. People are making plans. People are projecting into the future. That means that there is some idea of the future. But still, if they don't get it, it's the endeavor, you know. There's no loss or diminution. Anyway, this is a very long purport, and we were just going to try to read through it. We read the
Well,
first
we won't
paragraph.
finish it today, that's for sure.
That is for sure.
But that's okay.
Yeah, because
Gives
it's not
us another opportunity to read the Bhagavatam and discuss.
Yes. Should we read one more paragraph or just stop there?
Maybe we should stop and ponder what we just said.
Okay. So if anyone has any thoughts on some of the things that we just brought up, then please write them in the comments. So you can comment,
You can share,
subscribe.
like.
If you mix them up, it doesn't work so well.
Yeah, don't mix them up.
All right. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Nice discussion. Hare Krishna. All
Hare
glories to
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.